Well, it's that time of year again. Time to start thinking about hunting seasons next fall. I'm Joe Sandrini, wildlife biologist with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department in Newcastle, and I'll be your guide as we present the proposed hunting seasons for some of the areas up in northeast Wyoming. We'll go ahead and begin with antelope seasons. Up in the very northeast corner of the state, we find the North Black Hills antelope herd, which is comprised of hunt areas 1, 2, 3, 18, and 19. This herd is managed for a population of 17,000 antelope, and all of our objectives are post-season objectives, meaning the number of critters that are on the ground after the hunters go home at the end of the season. Our best estimate is last year that herd numbered about 10,400, and with the seasons as proposed and what's been happening with herd performance, that herd's projected to grow about 3,000 head to 13,200 into 2024. And this last year when we did our preseason classifications, we found 62 fawns for every 100 does that were out there and 42 bucks per 100 does. So looking at our classification ratios for North Black Hills pronghorn, that top line, the yellow line, is our fawn doe ratio. And you can see we had pretty good fawn production back in 2014 and 15. And then it kind of generally declined on through 2021 with a little bit of a bump up last year and then back down again this year. Basically, when it comes to pronghorn and deer, we'd like to see that fawn doe ratio 65 or higher, really. And then when you're down around 65, you're just barely what you can do to maintain your population. And the bottom line there, the brown line, is our buck-doe ratio. And as we've adjusted harvest, we've managed to keep our buck-doe ratio pretty consistent. As you can see, it's been averaged right about 45 bucks per 100 does. And that pink zone, that's where we'd like it to be. If we look at our harvest up there, as you can see, harvest increased following those good years of fawn production, and then as seasons became more conservative, as the population began to drop, harvest declined as well. So taking all of this into consideration, we're thinking that we can probably increase our Type 1 or any antelope license issuance a little bit in some of the hunt areas up this year, because that'll provide taking the extra bucks but still allowing that population to grow. So in Area 1, we're proposing to increase from 250 to 300 any antelope or Type 1 licenses and leave the doe fawn tags the same, just a nominal 75 to allow those landowners that need to control antelope that option. In Area 2, we're not looking at making any changes, so the season's identical to last year with 150 Type 1 licenses and the traditional season dates for the firearm season of October 1 to November 20. Same season dates in Area 3, again with a slight increase in Type 1 license issuance going from 175 to 225 any antelope licenses, and then just a handful, 25 doe fawn tags, which is no change from last year. Heading on south, we have the Black Thunder antelope herd, and it's one of the largest in the state. It's bounded on the north by I-90, on the south by Highway 18 and 20, on the east by the South Dakota and Nebraska state lines, and on the west by Highway 59. And it encompasses a number of hunt areas. Here we're managing for 49,000 antelope, and our best guess is last year after the hunters went home, we were a little over 27,000. The postseason projection into 2024 shows a drop down to about 26,000, a little bit north of that. However, given our fawn production and survival that we've had this winter, there's a lot of variation around that estimate. Right now, I'm projecting that we'll actually probably increase antelope numbers out there this next year. As far as the classifications went, back in August, we found 69 fawns per 100 does and 43 bucks per 100 does. And again, you can see sort of the same picture with the fawn production here as up north. We had really good fawn production in 2014 and 15. It was still darn good here in 2016 and 17, and then it really dropped off. And you can see we were below 65 fawns per 100 does between 2018 and 2021, and we've gotten just north of that the last couple years. And so that population probably actually bottomed out this last year and is now starting to recover. Our buck ratio in there, again, has been fairly stable, again, around that 45 per 100, and that's because we've adjusted license issuance as the population has changed. And again, sort of the same story with antelope harvest in Thunder Basin as in North Black Hills. And again, if we go back to 2015, our harvest increased as our population came up, and then as our population began to decline, we pulled tag numbers, dropped them down, and harvest declined. And so in 2023, we had our lowest harvest in that herd in a long, long time. And then looking at those green dots there on 2024, we're projecting to increase buck harvest a little bit, maybe about 25%, not quite. And again, very little to no doe fawn harvest to allow that herd to grow. With that said, in antelope areas 4 and 5, we're looking at a 25% increase or so in type 1 tags. So going from 75 to 100 type 1s in area 4, and from 100 to 125 licenses in area 5. And again, the standard season dates up there of October 1 to November 20 for the regular firearms season. Looking at hunt areas 6 and 7, again, here we have standard season dates of October 1 to October 15. And again, about a 25% increase in type 1 licenses, going from 125 licenses in area 6 to 150, and in area 7 going from 250 to 325 type 1 any antelope licenses. In areas 8 and 27, in area 8, again, we're looking at about that same 25% increase in type 1 licenses. Again, sticking with the standard season dates for rifle season of October 1 to October 15, and going from 175 to 225 licenses. Area 27, which is one of the more popular ones in the state because of the large amount of public land. It's real tough for a non-resident to draw that without maximum points, and it's only been about a 30% chance for residents to draw. The antelope haven't bounced back in that area as well as they have in some other areas the last year or two, and so we're proposing to leave the quota in there the same at 125 licenses with the standard season dates of October 1 to October 15. As far as archery seasons go for antelope in all hunt areas, the archery season will open August 15th and it'll run to September 30th because all of the areas up here, the rifle season opens October 1. And that represents no change from the past several years. Moving on to deer, in the northeast corner of the state, we have the Black Hills, both mule deer and whitetail herd units that make up hunt areas 1 through 6. And for mule deer up there, we're managing for 30,000 mule deer postseason. And as far as the whitetails go, we're managing for 55,000. And deer numbers up here, they rebounded pretty well between 2014 and 2018. It was kind of the same story as with the antelope, thanks to really 3 good years of fawn production and survival. But then the populations of both species of deer in the Black Hills dropped dramatically and probably bottomed out last year about as low as they've been in decades, and we're just starting to turn the corner. And that's because we did have a little bit of elevated mortality in the 2018 and 19 winter, but the bigger story has been poor fawn production and survival for the last 4 or 5 years. And then we had a really big epizootic hemorrhagic disease, EHD, and also blue tongue virus die off in 2021, and then to a lesser extent in 2022. If we look at our hunting strategies up here for deer in the Black Hills, it's recreational hunting because of the number of deer that we have and the way we need to manage. And so for mule deer, we try to have between 20 to 29 bucks per 100 does post-season or after the hunt, so when the hunt's done. Whereas whitetail, we manage on a preseason buck ratio, and we're looking to have 25 to 44 bucks per 100 does before the hunt begins. So let's go ahead and look at the mule deer up in the Black Hills a little closer. Our population objective is 30,000 mule deer up here. And right now our best guess is last year we bottomed out at a little over 14,000. and we're not really projected to increase too much. Basically stay flat into 2024 with the season as it is. And that's even with really good fawn production up here. This last year we had 72 fawns per 100 does. Our buck ratio was a bit low at 20. It's kind of on the lower end of where we want to be. But that's because we have had such poor fawn production and survival the last few years. We have just not been able to backfill those bucks even with more conservative hunting seasons. Also, we revised the way we're estimating deer numbers up here, and that lowered our estimate a little bit. But again, between 2020 and 2022, we've just had really poor fawn production and survival, but we've had good news this year for a change. And so if we look at our trend count up here, and this is a preseason trend count that's done in October, you can see how this population cycles. And our last peak, big peak, was back in 2006. We bottomed out in 2011. We climbed back to a little peak in about 2018. And then you can see we bottomed out last year in 2022 and have started to climb back up just a little bit. This is the actual estimated postseason population. And so if you go through, you can see we went from 2011, that increase kind of kicked along there, and then it decreased through 2022. That black line on 2023 with the dot in the middle of it, we actually were able to do a rough estimate of the population this last November. And that estimate comes in at that black dot with the bars above and below it being the confidence intervals. We know we missed a number of deer because of the conditions when we were flying. It was warm, a lot of them were timbered up. And so with that estimate coming in on the high end of that confidence interval, about 25% above the projected number, that makes me feel really good because that's about what we feel like we missed for deer. And you can see going into 2024, it shows the population remaining about where it's at. But again, there's a wide confidence intervals around that because a lot can happen between now and then. If we look at our classifications up here, that top line is, the green line is our fawn-doe ratio, postseason fawn-doe ratio. The dashed yellow line is sort of the minimum number that we need to grow the population. And so as you can see, most years going back all the way to 2000, unlike a lot of mule deer herds, this mule deer herd in the Black Hills has the potential to grow. You can see a lot of years we're either at or above that dashed yellow line. But if you look back in the recent history between 2020 and 2022, you can see those 3 years with the black circles around them, we were well below what we need to maintain that population. And so you throw that in the mix along with the disease die-off, and it's really what's caused our population decline up there. But as you can see, we got good news in 2023. We bounced back up above that yellow dashed line, and so looking to turn the corner on mule deer. And with the mild winter we had, we're starting to see some good numbers just starting to come back. That bottom line, the black line, is our buck-doe ratio. The red line that runs through the middle of it is actually the trend line. So if you look at all the data, even though it's fluctuated, we've have maintained a consistent buck-doe ratio over time. The sort of green shaded area is the zone that we want to be in. And you can see when our populations have dropped, we've gotten down below that a bit, but we've managed to climb back up. And so as you can see in 2023, we're just getting back into the green zone. And with the proposed season, our buck ratio should come up again a little bit in 2024. Again, it's sort of the same story with harvest as with antelope. As our population increased between 2013 and 2018, harvest was increased. And then as the population began to drop, we had more conservative seasons and our take declined. And so as we look at what's going to happen with 2024, those are the brown dots on the far right. That's our estimated harvest. Again, we're harvesting really 0 does and fawns when it comes to mule deer, and a few more bucks with a slightly longer season that we're going to have. And again, our buck ratio should increase. If we talk about white-tailed deer in the Black Hills, our population objective for the Black Hills white-tailed deer herd is 55,000. And our best guess is last year, after the hunters went home, we were slightly above half of that. So we've only got about half the number of whitetails that we'd like to have up here. Although we are projected to increase some in 2024, I don't think the increase is going to be quite that substantial because our fawn numbers were very low again this year for white-tailed deer. I think some of that has to do with leftover effects from hemorrhagic disease and blue tongue and things. But anyway, this last fall, before the hunters showed up, we found 52 fawns per 100 does, which again is really too low to grow that population, and 28 bucks per 100 does. The data presented on these graphs, again, this is our trend count similar to the mule deer, and the trend count is the sort of green olive drab bars, and our population estimate is the sort of orangish yellow bars with the black line around it. The trend count's actually inflated by a factor of 10, so you can kind of compare the bars a little bit. But you can see, again, our population had bottomed out in 2011, grew through about 2017 or 2018, declined since, and at least the model's projecting it to have bounced back up a little in 2023. I don't think we did too much really, and I don't know that we're going to grow a lot into 2024. And again, the story behind those population swings really is borne out in looking at our fawn doe ratio. And so if we look at this graph here, the blue bars are our observed preseason fawn doe ratio. That white dashed line is where we need that number to be if we're going to really be able to grow this herd at all. And so you can see starting back about 2014, between 2014 and 2018, we were above that line. And so our population was growing. We were able to increase harvest. Since that time, so really the last 5 years, our fawn production and survival has just been sort of steadily dropping off, and it hasn't been enough to get that herd to bounce back. And you throw on top of that increased mortality with disease, and consequently our whitetail numbers in the Black Hills are as low as they've been in a number of decades. And again, this is why I'm not really looking for that population to increase next year, even though the model is suggesting that it may. If we look at the orange bars, that is our buck-doe ratio. And again, the green zone there is where we want to be. So as you can see, most years, but since 2013, we've been in that green zone. We've had bucks where they need to be. But pretty obvious if you've been hunting up here and looking at the data, the last 3 years, 2021, 22, 23, we've been at the lower end of that. And until we get some backfill, we start getting more fawns hitting the ground and surviving, it's not going to come up a lot, even with the more restrictive seasons that we have in place. So again, our harvest of whitetail up here, it again follows the pattern of mule deer and pronghorn. As our populations increased, harvest was increased. Then beginning about 2018, as populations began to decline, we started implementing more conservative seasons, resulting in lower harvest. And so you can see we've dropped quite a bit the number of bucks we're harvesting. We're down to harvesting just a very few does and fawns. We're maintaining that opportunity because there are a few landowners that do have issues with deer damage and depredation to allow them to control deer numbers on their property. So looking at the hunting seasons up here, we'll start north of the interstate and hunt areas 1, 2, and 3. And there we're looking at one change to last year's season, and that's going from a 17-day season to a 20-day season. So in hunt areas 1, 2, and 3 on a general license, the regular rifle season will open November 1 and close November 20th. And with your general license, you can kill an antlered deer. So it doesn't matter if you're on private or public, you can only harvest antlered deer on a general license. We are looking at slightly increasing the Type 8 license issuance, and that is a doe fawn tag that's valid for white-tailed deer only on private land. We manage the deer species separately with different types of licenses. This is how we do it. And so our Type 8 license, same season dates, November 1 to November 20, and we're looking at having 350 of those tags, which again are valid only for white-tailed doe fawn on private land. Moving south of the interstate in the Black Hills in hunt areas 4, 5, and 6, as far as a general license season goes, Again, it'll run November 1 to November 20, and on that general license, again, you may only harvest antlered deer, whether it's a mule deer or a whitetail. It has to be a buck, except that this Ranch A, the state of Wyoming's Ranch A, will be closed to deer hunting as it always is. The only doe fawn tags that are valid south of the interstate are type 8 tags in area 4. And those tags, again, we'll just have 25 of those. They're only valid for white-tailed deer on private land at the same season dates, November 1 to November 20. And similar to Area 4 on general license, again, it's antlered deer only, November 1 to November 20 for the regular deer season. And there will be no doe fawn tags issued in Areas 5 and 6. Looking at the proposed non-resident Region A quota, so this is for non-residents who want to hunt deer areas 1 through 6, proposing to again issue 2,000 of those. That represents no change from last year. And just looking at the draw odds, my best guess is that means there'll be about a 30% chance for non-residents with no points in the random draw to get one of those tags. It'll be probably a 100% draw if they're willing to buy the special, the high price license in the random draw. And with somewhere between 1 and 2 preference points, a non-resident hunter should be able to draw a Region A tag. And if they want to go the high priced route, the special route with preference points, basically that should be a guaranteed draw. One other thing regarding deer management in the Black Hills, this last fall and early winter, we did do a survey of landowners and outfitters along with hunters up here and their perceptions and thoughts about deer management. We surveyed 440 landowners, got about a 42% response rate back from them, and we surveyed just over 1,500 Black Hills deer hunters. There's a lot of data, good data was generated in this, and if you'd like additional information on that, please contact me. I'd be happy to share that with you. Moving on south to the Cheyenne River mule deer herd unit. And this is Region B for non-residents, and it's composed of general deer license areas 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 21, along with limited quota hunt area number 10. So it's a rather large hunt area. It runs from Highway 16 down to Highway 1820, and again on the east is bounded by South Dakota and Nebraska, and on the west by Highway 59. Here we're managing for 27,000 mule deer, and our best guess is that we were well below that in 2023 at about 10,400, and that population is projected not to change in 2024, to remain just right exactly where it's at. Last year we found 65 fawns per 100 does when we classified in late November, early December, and 31 bucks per 100 does. And again, similar to the Black Hills, we changed our estimation technique in 2022 for mule deer. That revised the estimate downward a little bit, but again, as similar to the Black Hills, the story here is really 6 of the last 7 years we've had really poor fawn production and survival. So we're just not getting deer backfilling into the population. If we look at our historical fawn-doe ratio here, so the blue line that bounces around up and down and zigzags, that is our observed fawn-doe ratios going all the way back to 1991. That green line is sort of, again, it's our magic line at about 66 fawns per 100 does, that we need to be above that to be able to really to grow this herd. The sad thing is if you look at this herd, and this is similar to a lot of mule deer herds around the West, that red line is the trend. So if we plot a trend line through that data, you can see it's declined. And it's declining down below that green line. In fact, going back, you've got to go all the way back to about the year 2000 to find a time frame that we were consistently above that green line, that we had fawn production survival that we needed to really keep that herd going and growing. And then we get down sort of near that green line in the early 2000s. But really, since 2008 or so, we've had a lot more years below that green line than above it. As you can see, I mean, really, we've only had 3 years in the last like 15 that we've had good enough fawn production and survival to grow this herd. And so consequently, hunting seasons have just gotten more and more conservative. If we look at our buck-doe ratio in there, and again, this zone, the pink zone's where we want to be, we tend to average about 35 bucks per 100 does or a little bit more in there. You can see after a couple years of really good fawn production in 2014 and 15, our buck ratio jumps up. Then it starts coming back down as we harvested those excess deer. The really low number down there in 2021, we did not get very many deer counted that year, so I don't put a lot of stock in that number. It probably was a little bit higher than that. But you can see the last couple years we are down at the very bottom edge or below where we'd like to be for bucks. And again, that's simply because we just have not had the fawn production and survival to backfill and bring bucks into the population. If we look at our proposed hunt seasons for some of the areas in Region B and Cheyenne River mule deer herd, looking at hunt areas 7, 8, and 9 on a general license. Again, it'll be the standard rifle season dates of October 1 to October 15th. And you may hunt an antlered mule deer or any whitetail. So general license, you got to hunt a buck mule deer, you can shoot any whitetail. In hunt area 8, we do have some type 3 licenses, which are limited quota license valid for any whitetail deer. That season runs October 1 to November 30, and we're looking at increasing from 25 to 50 licenses, again valid for any white-tailed deer. We are also going to add a Type 8 license, which is a doe-fawn white-tailed deer license in Area 8. Again, 50 of those with the season dates of October 1 to November 30. So again, we manage mule deer and whitetail separately, license issuance for those species separately, depending on what we need to do. Looking at hunt area 10, our limited quota area, we are looking at cutting the type 1 licenses back 25% from 100 to 75. And again, this is because of the low buck numbers. And that license is valid for antlered or buck mule deer or any whitetail. And then in area 10, we also have a few of the whitetail tags. So the type 3, 25 of those that are valid for any whitetail deer, and then 25 of the type 8s that are valid for doe-fawn white-tailed deer. Hunt area 11, similar to 7, 8, and 9 on a general license, October 1 to October 15. You can hunt antlered mule deer or bucks or any white-tailed deer, although there is a general season for whitetails down there that runs October 16 to November 30. And we also issue a couple of whitetail only tags that are valid in hunt areas 11 through 14. So the type 3 tag with season dates that run October 1 to November 30. Again, 200 of those licenses that are valid for any white-tailed deer. That's no change from last year. And the type 8, which is the doe-fawn white-tailed deer tag, 200 of those licenses, which again doesn't represent a change. Those whitetail populations down there have struggled a bit to come back after EHD and blue tongue die-offs a couple years ago. They are starting to bounce back a bit, but not enough that we feel like we can increase tag issuance yet. As far as Region B goes, which is the non-resident general region to cover Cheyenne River mule deer, looking at cutting that 20% from 1,000 licenses down to 800. And I'm guessing that the draw odds are going to probably be about 40% on that license with no points. And again, it's just a matter of the fact that our buck numbers are struggling after 6 or 7 years of not very good fawn production. Archery seasons for deer, whether you're hunting the Black Hills or Cheyenne River, will be the month of September. Now we'll go ahead and move on to elk. So with elk, we'll go ahead and start up in the very northeast corner of the state again. And there we have the Black Hills elk herd unit. And it's comprised of hunt areas 1, 116, and 117. Currently, we're managing the Black Hills elk herd for a satisfaction objective, meaning we're trying to manage for 60% hunter and 60% landowner satisfaction. And additionally, we have a sub-objective of the average age of bulls harvested, with 20% of the bulls harvested being 2 years old or less, 60% between 3 and 6 years old, and 20% 6 years old or greater. However, this objective is going away because we need to start managing for an objective that better directs harvest to address elk numbers and landowner concerns. And so we're proposing to change this moving into the future. And what we're looking at for the Black Hills elk herd as a management objective is to set a winter trend count objective. So basically we'd go out in a helicopter, we'd fly the same pattern every year and count all the elk that we can count, and then based on a 3-year average of that, whatever that number is, we come up with manage towards that number. So we're managing towards a set number of wintering elk. And so we'll need to set harvest goals to meet that objective, and we'll do that, of course, through the regular hunting season, and then if we need to, using Chapter 34 or auxiliary seasons to help facilitate harvest on private land. Most of these elk do occur on private land, and access can be limited, so we have to try to help the landowners help themselves to manage these elk numbers. And we also are going to maybe consider some other management goals as we move forward, perhaps another goal related to the bull harvest or success rates on licenses or other things. So moving ahead in the next few years, we are going to move towards a winter trend count objective in the Black Hills, and we just need to get a few years data to figure out exactly what that number is going to be. If we look at our elk harvest up here, Area 1, which is 97% public land, we try to maintain high success in there and a good harvest every year. We haven't changed license numbers too much, and as you can see, we've been harvesting about 50 bulls in there every year. Some years a little less, some a little more, and we've been averaging about 30 or so cows harvested and just a handful of calves. So not looking at any changes for elk Area 1. So again, we would issue 100 any elk licenses, the Type 1, which has rifle season dates of October 15 to November 30. The Type 4, the full price antlerless tag, again issuing 75 of those for the same season dates. If we look at our hunter success from 2023 on that Type 1 license, we're running 58% success, which is about where we've been the last few years, and about 38% on Type 4s. So that's been holding fairly steady. That's kind of where we'd like it with the Type 1 licenses, just right at or under 60% success. It would be nice if we could get the Type 4 license success up a little bit and harvest a few more cows and calves in there. Looking at Area 117, which is where the bulk of the harvest in the Black Hills comes from, we've been steadily increasing license numbers in there, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if we go all the way back to 2013, there was 668 active licenses, and we harvested 264 total elk. That compares with this last year, where we had a little bit more than 1,800 active licenses and supposedly harvested just under 1,000 elk. That includes the auxiliary season, the Chapter 34 season that we ran that harvested about 150 elk. That number I think is biased a little bit high, and I think basically it's because we didn't get real good response on our hunter survey this year, and we know that there's kind of bias. Hunters that are successful tend to report, and ones that aren't don't. But again, it is the highest harvest level that we've had in Area 117 since we've had that area. And this is the story, kind of the longer term story in Area 117. So if we go all the way back to 2000, the purple line with the little circles, that's the number of active licenses that we've had. And then the brown line with the dots and the numbers, that's what the total elk harvest has been. And so as you can see, the distance between those lines tends to get greater. That's because access is difficult. Just because you add one license, you don't necessarily kill one more elk. And so in recent years, it's been about a 1 to 3. So for every 3 licenses we add, we've been harvesting about one more elk. When we did do a winter trend count for the first time in Area 117 this year to kind of figure out how it was going to work. And what we ended up finding basically is we counted just a hair over 1,700 elk in 2024. Compared to with what South Dakota did, and they flew parts of this in 2016 and 2017. These are not exactly comparable numbers, but you can see our wintering population has probably increased. Those blue bars for 2016 and 2020 are actually probably closer to the top end of those arrows because we have been increasing harvest. That's the confidence interval in there, and because they didn't survey all of Area 117, again, the numbers are higher than what's represented by those bars. So looking at the changes to elk Area 117, there's some pretty significant changes proposed to this year. The first thing is actually a slight decrease in the Type 1 licenses issued. So going from 600 to 500 licenses. We had supposedly 63% success on those licenses last year. I think that was skewed really high because in 2022 we only had 400 licenses and success was down closer to 50%. And so we went from 400 to 600 licenses and supposedly had greater hunter success, which I would not expect. Crowding on what's available for public land on that license type has gotten to be pretty significant, and we are needing to kind of let some of the bulls grow up to become older age class bulls, and so we're proposing to drop the Type 1 license issuance, basically to allow some recruitment into older age classes for bulls and to improve the hunt quality on public land. The Type 2 licenses, which was kind of our raghorn license, we're proposing on getting rid of that, so deleting that. And we had supposedly had 45% success on that license last year. Also deleting the full price Type 4 or the antlerless tag. Instead, we're proposing to replace the Type 2 and the Type 4 license with a Type 3. And that Type 3 license would be valid for spike or antlerless elk. And again, the thought here is one good way to manage your bull herd is to take younger bulls, so your yearling or 2-year-old bulls, in this case yearlings with spikes, allow some, if the elk makes it past the yearling, so he survives that season, letting him grow up to become a good, mature, more of a trophy quality bull before you harvest him. And so the idea there with that Type 3 license, again, is to back off harvest on those middle-aged bulls, because after a couple years of hitting those, I think we've done what we needed to on that license type, and then have this Type 3 license. So full price license, it's valid for spike or antlerless elk. General licenses, again, will be valid in just a very small portion of Area 117, basically on Elk Mountain. So we are proposing on allowing general licenses to harvest antlerless elk south of Highway 16. Okay, so unlike previous years where you could harvest a bull on that license there, it'll be antlerless elk. And we'll explain that a little bit more when we get to Hunt Area 126. Moving on to our reduced price cow-calf tags in Area 117, there's some pretty major changes proposed in here as well. If we begin with our Type 6 license, and that's the cow-calf tag that's valid for the entire hunt area. And again, the standard season dates up there for the rifle season are October 15 to January 31. This license, this Type 6 license, has had our lowest success. It was 30% hunter success last year. It's actually tended to be lower than that most years, and it does add to crowding on public land. And so we're looking at reducing that license type slightly from 175 tags issued to 150. The Type 7 license, which was a cow-calf tag that was valid off National Forest, that's been sort of our bread and butter tag for harvesting cow elk up here. And the season dates on that had run August 15th to the end of January. What we're proposing to do this year is eliminate that license and replace it with a Type 8. This Type 8 license, which would have season dates of August 1 to the end of January, would be a cow-calf tag that's valid on private land, but unlimited in number. So if the proposed changes go through, we would have unlimited Type 8 licenses, and hunters would be able to get as many of those as they wanted. However, they would be restricted to hunting a cow or calf on private land. The intent for this license is to allow landowners maximum flexibility to harvest elk that are causing significant damage and depredation issues. We need to be able to get harvest on those elk, and we need to be able to have those landowners get the hunters that they need and want on their land to do that for them. So that's why this is being proposed. Finally, moving forward, the last few years we've had general licenses and cow-calf tags valid south of US Highway 16 on Elk Mountain. And so with the move to non-resident regions for general elk hunting, beginning in 2025, we're proposing to move that portion of Area 117 that is south of US Highway 16 into Area 126. But again, that won't happen until 2025. Rochelle Hills elk herd, which is comprised of hunt areas 113 and 123 out in the Thunder Basin grasslands, is our next herd to look at. So Area 113, which is about 50% public land, we hunt, it's kind of a small herd out there, so we tend to hunt bulls every other year or so. We are proposing, though, to increase the Type 3 licenses out there. So while there will not be a Type 1 license, that's being eliminated for 2024. The Type 3 tag, we're looking at increasing from 100 to 150, and that license is valid for spike or antlerless elk. And again, the idea there being you need to maintain your bull-cow ratio. You can't let it get skewed so you have too many bulls. So in order to do that, we harvest the excess bulls as spikes and then allow them to grow up to mature elk. And the archery season out there runs September 1 to September 30. In Area 123, again, we're looking at, we hunt bulls out there, mature bulls, about every other year. So this is the off year, so eliminating the Type 1 tag. We are maintaining 50 of the Type 2 or the raghorn tag out there, and that's for antlered elk, 5 points or less on antler or an antlerless elk. And again, rifle season dates in there will be September 1 to November 30. Same thing with the full priced or the Type 4 antlerless tags, 75 of those. And again, here the bull ratio, there's enough bulls out there that we do still need to remove some of those younger age bulls. A general license will be valid from September 1 to November 30, but only in the Raven Creek drainage. So a very small part of elk area 123. That's similar to past years. We just moved that from the 126 designation into this 123 designation. Again, with the reduced price cow-calf tags, similar to the Black Hills, we're eliminating the Type 6, which was a cow-calf tag, and replacing it with the Type 8. Again, it's that unlimited cow-calf tags that are valid on private land only, and again, running the season September 1 to November 30. So again, it's to allow landowners maximum flexibility to address over-objective elk herd numbers. Looking at Area 126, which is general license area, it's kind of a, again, sort of complicated seasons in there. We start off with rifles September 1 to September 30 in Weston County. So that part of Area 126 in Weston County, the rifle season is valid for any elk beginning September 1. The rest of the hunt area for rifles opens October 1 to October 31 for any elk. Then beginning November 1 in the entire area, it's antlerless elk. So you can't shoot a bull on a general license after November 1. If we look over here at Elk Mountain, we're getting rid of the Type 6 tags in Area 126, similar to what we did in 117 and 123, and again replacing them with a Type 8. So the Type 8 tag, again, is this unlimited cow or calf tag that's valid on private land, but that Type 8 tag is also valid in that portion of Area 117 south of Highway 16. So that Elk Mountain, that part that's going to in 2025 just become part of 126, so we can get rid of this complicated regulation. Okay, so that Type 8 tag then, beginning August 15th and running through the end of September, is valid on private land in that portion of Area 117 south of Highway 16. Then that same license, beginning October 1 and running through the end of January, is valid in the entire area and also that portion of 117 south of Highway 16. So what we've done with these Type 8 licenses, if you look back at the other hunt areas and at this hunt area, is we're separating, at least on public land, we're separating that early cow-calf hunting from the archery season. So the early cow-calf hunting is going to occur on these Type 8 licenses only on private land during the archery season, so that we don't have to have conflicts with rifle hunters and archery hunters on public land. So our archery seasons for elk, again, will be September 1 to September 30. Of course, except for Area 123, there's no special archery season in 123. And again, the way that we've tried to set this up is to reduce conflicts with cow elk hunters and rifle hunters in September. Moving on to bighorn sheep, up in the northeast corner of the state, we have the Cuba Canyon herd, which makes up Hunt Area 20. And it's a little sheep herd that occurs right along the South Dakota-Wyoming state line on Elk Mountain. For 2024, we're proposing to have go from 2 to 1 resident any ram license, and the rifle season would open September 1, run through the end of November, with archery opening August 15th. South Dakota is planning on having 3 licenses again this fall. They set their seasons for several years in a row, so they can't change that. And overall in Wyoming, in this hunt area, we've harvested 28 rams since 2009. 22 of those have gone to residents and 6 to non-residents. Right now, I'm a little bit worried about our herd performance here. Our numbers have been declining a bit. I think we did lose a number of sheep in 2021 to EHD and blue tongue virus, just like we did with deer and antelope in this part of the country. And spending some time up there on Elk Mountain the last few winters, just not quite seeing the number of rams I'd like to see. So I think it's a good idea that we just bump down from 2 licenses to 1 this year to just kind of be conservative in there and maybe hope we get some recovery, because we are seeing pretty good numbers of lambs in there. So we ought to be able to bounce back here hopefully in the next few years. Moving on to game birds. Starting off with sage grouse in the very northeast corner of the state. Area 2 again will be closed this year, and that's no change. It's been closed for the last several years. And as you can see, that Area 2 there, which is in the red, takes up most of southeast Wyoming and then the very northeast corner. Then Area 4 up here was closed for the first time last year to sage grouse hunting, and it's proposed to be closed again in 2024. If you are going to hunt sage grouse in the rest of the state where the season is open, there'll be a couple new changes for 2024. First is a sage grouse hunting permit is going to be required. This isn't going to cost you anything else. It's going to be available free and online, but it's needed to track harvest because we are not able to track sage grouse harvest real well using just small game bird licenses. And so beginning in 2024, you are going to be required to get a permit to hunt sage grouse where the season's open so that we can contact you and better track harvest and make sure we can manage these birds in the future. Moving on to wild turkey, and there's some pretty substantial changes proposed for 2024 for wild turkey. But before we get into that, let's talk about how they've been doing up here in the northeast corner. So poult production is the best predictor of future turkey herds. Herds, I guess, whatever. Turkeys on the ground. Anyway, looking up here, that purple line is the poults per hen that we've observed in August up here in the Black Hills. And the dashed purple line is the long-term average. So as you can see, most of the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years or so, we've been at or above average. It looks like we're below average in 2022, and that's because of an interesting thing that happens with Merriam's wild turkeys, which is the subspecies we have up here. And that is most yearling hens are not successful nesters. And so if you look at the top line, the red line, that's the poults per brood. And you can see that number was really high in 2021. Okay, and so that means that the hens that had broods in 2021 were very successful. All of those little poults in 2021 were yearling hens in 2022, which means they weren't successful nesters for the most part. And so that drags that number down. And then you can see we bounce back up to about average this year. So even though 2022 looks like a poor production year, it was actually a pretty darn good year. We just had a lot of yearling hens in the population. So turkey numbers, as a consequence, have been rebounding up here in the Black Hills. The green line at the bottom is our tom per hen ratio, and it tends to be fairly steady around 75 or 75 toms per 100 hens. You can see it bounced up there in 2020. I think that was a little bit more of an artifact of just what we happened to see in the field that year. I don't think it really bounced up that high. Just one of those oddball years when things are a little different when you're driving around. And so really our tom numbers have been staying pretty consistent compared to our number of hens. If we look at our spring harvest in the Black Hills, and spring gobbler harvest is a good indication of population level, you can see we probably bottomed out between like 2013 and 2015. Our populations came back, really followed that poult production, a year or two post, and then we dropped down and we've come back the last couple years. And as far as the statewide percentage of the number of birds harvested in the spring in the Black Hills, we've really bounced back. So 2009 and 2010, 60% of the wild turkeys harvested in the spring came out of the Black Hills. That's when we had a 2-bird limit up here, kind of an experimental deal. In 2020, we bottomed out at only about a third of the birds harvested came from the Black Hills. And then this last year, we were back up to about 50%. So and that's kind of our long-term average. About half of the spring turkeys come out of the Black Hills in Wyoming. So the big change that we're looking at for this year is going from 5 hunt areas in the state. So hunt areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will all be replaced by a single hunt area. It'll be known as Hunt Area 1. And there is a separate PowerPoint posted if you're more interested and want to learn more about turkey management and why we're doing this and what's happening with turkeys in the state, that you can go ahead and have a look at. But as we move to this single statewide hunt area, the first time that'll happen is in the fall of 2024. And so on a general license, statewide, anywhere in the state on a general license, the month of September, a person can harvest any wild turkey using archery equipment. Then the rifle season begins October 1, runs through the end of December, and again, that's any wild turkey with a general license in the fall. In some counties, we're issuing a Type 3 license, and that basically is our population management tag. Okay, so that is intended to help reduce populations. And that Type 3 tag will be valid September 1 to September 30 for archery for any wild turkey in Converse, Natrona, Campbell, Johnson, and Sheridan counties. Then rifle season in those same counties on that Type 3 license will open October 1, run through the end of December. And again, that Type 3 license is valid only in Converse, Natrona, Campbell, Johnson, and Sheridan counties. So basically what it means in the Black Hills, you can only hunt on a general license, and it's month of September for archery, October 1 to December 31 for firearms, and it's any wild turkey. So that's kind of the Northeast Black Hills story as this whole thing changes. So looking at our spring season for 2025, and again, it'll be a statewide single hunt area. Hunt Area 1 will be statewide beginning again this next fall. But in the spring on a general license, the season will open April 20th and run till the end of May. And your general license will be valid for any male wild turkey or wild turkey with a visible beard. One addition is, though, because we don't have the Area 4 Type 1 license anymore, if you want to hunt the yellowtail, you'll need to draw a hunter management area permission slip. So again, general licenses will be valid statewide, except in order to hunt on the yellowtail unit, you'll need in addition that permission slip that you can get through our Access Yes program. Along with the general spring season, we'll have a Type 3 license, and that's our population control tag again. And that's valid only in certain counties. And it has an earlier opening date, which is intended to negatively impact breeding, again, because this is where we're trying to reduce turkeys. So beginning April 1 in Natrona, Campbell, Johnson, and Sheridan counties, if you have that Type 3 tag, you can start your spring hunt. We're proposing to have 700 of those. Then come April 20th, we throw Converse County in the mix. So Converse, Natrona, Campbell, and Johnson, and Sheridan counties then are all open on the Type 3 tag till the end of May. So what all that means is if you hunt in the Black Hills, you'll have to hunt on general license. That's the only license that'll be valid in the spring. And the season dates will be April 20th to May 31. A couple other changes to the turkey regs that we're looking at. One is a change in the evidence of sex requirement in the spring. And so the proposal is to make it similar to big game. Before, that evidence of sex had to be attached to the carcass. Now you can just have it with possession in the field with you and the carcass till you get home. So what that means is if you harvest a tom in the spring, you need to keep the beard on a patch of skin with a couple breast feathers attached with you, or a leg with a visible spur on it. If you happen to harvest a bearded hen, then you just need to have a patch of skin with the beard and a couple breast feathers on it, and you're good to go. But that way you can breast out your bird in the field if you want, and just retain that evidence of sex with you, throw it in a Ziploc bag or whatever in your cooler, and you're good to go. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to hunt the Yellowtail Wildlife Habitat Management Area in the spring, that'll require a hunter management permission slip. And those will be limited in number and be issued through a competitive drawing. Mountain lions, the season is set for one more year. We do that on a 3-year rotation. And so just as a reminder, in Hunt Area 1, we have a non-resident quota of 4, a resident quota of 20, Hunt Area 30, a quota of 12, and a Hunt Area 32, a quota of 25. That non-resident quota in Area 1 was met this year with our first or second good snow that we had. With the lack of snow this year, we haven't yet closed the quotas in those other hunt areas up here in the Black Hills. So that's about what I have for you. If you have anything for me or anyone else in the department about the proposed seasons, just need to have you get a hold of us by the 5 p.m. on March 29th, and there's a couple ways you can do that. One is to mail any comments that you have on the proposed regulations to our Casper office. And again, for those comments to be taken, we need your name on those. All comments are provided to all of the commissioners. They also show them to us in the field so we can see what everybody's thinking. If you would rather do it online, you can go to our website, and there's a place there for you to comment and view the proposed regulations. And again, if you have any questions about things up here in the northeast corner, please feel free to give me a call. My office number is 307-746-4646. And if I'm not in the office, that'll ring to my cell phone. Enjoy talking to you about hunting and seasons if you have any concerns. So that's what I have for you, and I hope you have a great fall hunting season coming up.